What's up, y'all? This is Jill Coleman, founder of JillFit and the host of Fit Biz U podcast. Super excited today on Everforward Radio. We talked all about internet business for health and fitness professionals. So if you are a beginner to online business, maybe you're in year like 1 of 5 of internet business and you want to learn how to build your social media, you want to learn how to maybe get on sales calls, maybe kind of have some high ticket sales, progress your clients through as soon as they're kind of done with you. What do you do? Like, what are some of your offers that you have? And we also talked about sort of like the mental side of internet business and how to sort of stay resilient and how to deal with challenges that come up and how to sort of iterate as the space changes. So hopefully you guys enjoy it, and hit me up on Instagram at JillFit and at FitBizU.
3, 2, 1.
What's up, Jill? How we doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm stoked to have you here. We were talking before we hit record about so many things going on in the health and fitness business space. And I've got a lot of people in my audience that are wanting to get into it, are already in it. And it's like they're two different people there, but there's no doubt a lot of value that you could bring when it comes to how to efficiently and successfully run a health and fitness business online, right?
Awesome. I think in the last year, we've seen so many people come into the space who are health and fitness professionals, and they're like, okay, now I'm doing my classes on Zoom or my personal training sessions on Zoom.
It's changed a lot.
I don't want to go back to the gym. How do I now take what I have here and make it into an online business? And what does that look like?
What have you seen it look like this past year?
It's been really interesting. You know, what's been really cool is having a lot of people come in and have their sort of maybe in-person clientele do distance coaching with them, doing virtual sessions with them. And they're realizing that, okay, this is kind of nice having this location independence, having this more like time freedom. Now, how do I take what I've already done and kind of reverse engineer it to like have a brand, and do I build a website, and like how do I kind of get started in getting people just outside of their local area, which, you know, is one of the biggest things. I mean, you know, it's one of the hardest things. People always say, well, you know, everyone following me is someone I know. And I'm like, yeah, that's how it's going to be for a while until you start, becoming a little more well-known. What
is it at the beginning? Let's start there. So the person who's, hey, I'm a health and fitness professional. I'm starting my online coaching business, training business, whatever you want to call it. What are some of the initial expectations that they should probably prepare themselves for? And what are some things that you could maybe pass back to hopefully help them, you know, save some sanity a little bit?
Yeah, I would say that's definitely the word for sure. It's definitely a mindset game in the beginning, because I think the expectation is if I just get into the space and I get my Instagram account and I have my Facebook account and I have a YouTube channel, whatever it is, that I just put out this stuff and all of a sudden people will just see how smart I am.
I mean, it doesn't work like that?
I wish it did.
And the money doesn't just come rolling in?
No. I wish it did. You know, and the cool thing is, I mean, I've been doing internet business now for 11 years, and even back in 2010, we kind of felt like the space was a little bit saturated,
really?
You know, and it's getting, obviously it's getting more and more saturated now. So when you come in, I think the biggest like pearl I could give the listener is just realizing that we're in the trust business. And this is really important to realize that, and you've probably heard, you know, people say this, that we buy from people we know, like, and trust. And it's the same thing online. You can't, it doesn't matter if you're the smartest, it doesn't matter if you have the most letters after your name. It doesn't matter if you have, you've been a personal trainer for 20 years in your local gym. People need to have a relationship with you too. And I feel like that's actually really nice to me. I'm like, okay, that means I get to be myself a little bit. I get to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit. I get to show my kind of personality, because the cool thing is that the client to coach matching system is so much more specific now. So for example, you walk into a gym and there's like 5 trainers. And you're like, which one of these 5 my similar, like, you know what I mean? I don't want the guy, that woman has the body I want, I'll pick her. So now
the power's kind of in the client.
Totally.
Really, yeah.
Yeah. And so you're kind of at the mercy of just not having that many options. Online, we have so many more options. So what that means is, I kind of talk about it like, I don't know, maybe in the 1950s, 1960s, you walked into an ice cream store and they had chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. And you were like, well, I don't love any of these, but I guess I'll do vanilla. Yeah. Now there's chocolate, double chocolate, chocolate chunk, death by chocolate, right? So it's the same thing online. We just have so many
Sounds like you're just describing my freezer. Yeah. Maybe I'm alone on that. I don't know.
We have just so many different varieties of coaches. And a lot of times people will sign up with a coach, not because you're the smartest, but because they feel the most connected to you. And so trust, by nature, takes time to build. which is the message I want to give to people, which you realize is that you don't just show up and someone automatically trusts you enough to give you cash. It really is relationship building, and you know this, and it's really about having that connection. And so you have to put some work in, and you have to start to build that. So for you, you might feel like, I've been doing this for 6 months. Where's all the clients?
Right, yeah.
It's probably going to be another year and a half. Like really for me, the sweet spot with my newbie clients is really around 18 to 24 months when things start like really picking up. It doesn't mean you can't make money in the first 90 days. In fact, I think you should, and you can. But I would say like things start getting a lot easier around like 16 to 24 months.
How can someone within their first 90 days actually begin to get some revenue in?
So the first thing I would start with for sure is just one-on-one coaching. It's the easiest sort of iteration out of the gym. So for now, maybe you have clients in the gym, or you have clients that are doing maybe one-on-one Zoom classes with you, very sort of basic. And you want to maybe do virtual coaching where you're writing their program for them, they're doing on their own. Maybe you're doing some Zoom coaching calls. Maybe you're setting their macro numbers or something like that. You already have people who know, like, and trust you already in your audience. They might be your neighbor. They might be someone from your local gym. They might be a friend of a friend, a family member even. Those are your first clients. And those are going to be, because you don't need to do the trust building work. They already trust you. They know you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure this happened with you too. Maybe you've had a client of yours that like went to high school with you or something, you know, and you're like, that's weird. I haven't even talked to them in 20 years, but
they know you as that person. I remember before it was even a strong thought in my mind I want to really kind of develop this side hustle, and long before I even left my job as a coach, it was family members. It was family members and people in my apartment building that would kind of we would have conversations in the elevator, or we would see each other in the gym, and that's where it started. That's absolutely. And I think absolutely people could and should look there to begin with.
Totally. And to me, that's like, that is a gold mine for you. Like you should be optimizing all that stuff, because when they get a result, they tell 5 other people.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So like your initial clientele is probably going to be word of mouth. You're not going to be, breaking the internet, getting viral stuff on Instagram. You're just not going to get that quite yet. And so I see a lot of frustration with newbies being like, well, I don't have 10,000 followers, or I'm not getting any traction. And you're probably not going to for a while. But I have a client right now who has 1,500 followers on Instagram, and she's making $250,000 online this year.
No way.
With 1,500 followers. Yeah. I mean,
good for her. Wow.
It's high ticket coaching, right? Yeah. So it's, she's charging, $500 to $700 a month and she does 6 and 12 month minimum commitments.
Wow.
So this is like a full on transformation program. So if you think about it that way, if you get like 5 or 10 clients, you're making 6 figures.
Yeah.
So you really have to look at it like, how can I maximize the people who are already following me, who already know me from, like you said, like your apartment building, and just be the best at delivering that, because over time you'll start to get really great results, and the social proof of that will help build your online business.
Now you said a concept there, a topic that I think can be scary for a lot of coaches, especially newbies. That's high ticket. I'll personally throw myself under the bus here, and I'll say that is anything over $100 a month. I was always so scared to charge more, especially in the beginning, because am I worth it? Sure. Are they going to want it? Are they going to stick to it? But personally speaking, again, once you, of course, stay within your scope of practice and can deliver, you have to deliver. Once you got into the $200, $300, $500, $700 a month, talk to us about what that actually is doing in terms of filtering out the types of people that you really want to work with versus don't.
I think there's an audience for both. Okay. But I think it's a mistake to think that everyone wants cheaper. I think most people just want the best. I don't think everyone wants Walmart, right? I think people want the best result. I'll give you guys a quick anecdote. I was on Instagram, as one is, like a couple weeks ago, and I was scrolling, and I love buying stuff on Instagram. I don't know if you do too. Like, they always get me.
I get targeted hard.
I love it. I'm like, I would never have come across these shoes if it wasn't for this ad. So anyway,
these galaxy lights in every floor of my house for
totally
$20. Yeah.
Well, to your point, the $20. So I see this ad. It's for these really cute women's shoes, and I'm like, oh my God, these are adorable. And I'm like, let me go and look. They looked really like designer, like super high end. So I click on the thing. I go over to the sales page. Guess how much they are?
$49.99.
$25. Wow. I was literally like, and guess what I did? Did not buy them. Why? Because I was like, there's something wrong with them.
They're $25.
There's something wrong with them. They must be super cheap. They're not made well. So remember, your client isn't necessarily bargain shopping. There's definitely a market for someone who's just like trying to they don't maybe trust themselves to follow through. So like, well, let me just take the cheaper option. So there'll always be that sort of client. But there is definitely a market for someone who wants a full transformation, who wants a 6-month commitment, wants someone to walk them through, hold their hand, is ready for that big change. And so I think you're selling yourself short if you don't have one high ticket offer. How do you effectively communicate that to your audience instead of just saying, hey, here's my,
rail drink coaching offer kind of thing, and here's my top shelf. How do we actually effectively communicate to our audience, here is the high value, without just saying, hey, here's the high value? How do we describe that? What are they going to be getting?
You know, I really think it's about where they're at in their own journey, to be honest. What I've seen is that another like little anecdote is I just joined a mastermind myself like a couple months ago, and it was with someone whose work I really appreciate, and he's a strategy guy, and I know he has multiple different offers. And so when we had our sort of strategy call about, am I going to join the mastermind? I was like, this is the most expensive one, right? Like I wanted to be in the top one.
Gotcha.
I didn't want something like, I was like, I'm ready, you know,
Yeah,
like I want, like, is this the most expensive one? I want to be in your top one. So I think talking about it can be really, I don't know, like I think you should say, this is exclusive. This is my top tier offer. This is for someone who's not just dabbling. This is for someone who's ready to make that big change. And that's not gonna be everyone. There's a lot of people who are just like, I'm scared. That sounds really scary. I don't want to change anything. I don't know if I'm ready. But for those who are ready, it's a hell yes. And those people end up being some of your best clients because they're willing to invest. They know what they're getting into, right? They're willing to, you know, take the time if it's a 6 or 12 month commitment, and they're ready to do the work. So I think you can literally talk about it like that. This is my top tier offer. It's super exclusive. I keep it small and intimate. We're going to be in each other's faces talking a lot. Like people really crave that, especially during the pandemic, right?
Especially nowadays.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Totally.
One more question here before we kind of progress. Yeah. Let's say that high ticket offer, you got them in your DMs, you got them on a phone call, you got them on a Zoom, whatever. The curiosity is there in the person. But this is where I didn't learn this in you know, exercise science class. The marketing, the salesmanship, you got to be able to hear what the person is saying, or rather not saying, and convey back to them to kind of fill that void rather of, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence. How do you like really get somebody to come over? Of course, if they're ready and willing, but just, you know,
right.
help them scratch that itch, so to speak.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I'm not a huge fan of like, there's a lot of sort of business programs out there that like help you overcome objections and like, here's your perfect sales script. I always go back to like, we're in the relationship business. So it kind of needs to feel organic, start to finish. And that doesn't mean that I won't push someone, but I definitely have the attitude, and I teach this to my students, is like, they need us more than we need them. They really do. They need us more than we need them. And that's not to say that's not a dig or whatever. It's just literally to say like, it's a doubling down on your own value and showing up to the call confident that you can change this person's life. And I think if you are scared to talk about your services in a really compelling way, it's probably because you haven't sold yourself yet.
That's absolutely yes.
On your offer, right?
Yeah,
like, so you're like, I always say the most important person to sell is yourself first, because if you're showing up to that call and you're already feeling like I'm scared to say the price, or I don't know if I'm worth it. Maybe you don't consciously think that, but I want to encourage you, if you are in that sales situation, which can be scary if you've never done it before. If you're in that situation, remember that the only part of the sales conversation that's actually a sale is when you say the dollar amount. Up until that point, it's literally just a conversation about like, are we a good fit? Yeah. And for me, I'm constantly trying to figure out if I want to work with this person. And I think that if you have that attitude of going in there and going like, you don't need the sale, then you're going to be a lot more discerning about who you decide to work with. And people like that. Like they feel that. I don't know about you, but like if it's a desperate sort of, you know, urgent, scarce energy on the phone, I'm like there's something about that energy that's really repellent. But if you show up on your sales call like super pumped that this person really needs your help, that's the energy you'll give off, and that's contagious. I
agree. If it gets to a point to where, and again, depending on where you are in your journey, it's going to feel and come across a little bit different, and it comes with confidence and having sold yourself first. But if you're always having to try to sell yourself on that quote sales call, then you've got more work to do. It's more than just trying to convince somebody. It's all the back work. It's that relationship that you were talking about before. Yeah.
And like, here's the thing is, you know, we know that confidence is area specific. So for example, you might never have done online coaching yet. So you don't know that you're good at it yet. So I do think there is something to getting enough reps in that area to have a show of evidence that you're good.
Yeah, I agree.
So you need to have this sort of almost borrowed confidence from where you have been. This is actually called threads of success. Looking in your life and being like, you know, I don't know that I'm good at online coaching yet, but I'm a really great mom. And I wasn't when I first had my baby, but now I'm a really great mom. Right? When I first started personal training in the gym 10 years ago, I wasn't that great, but now I'm the best trainer at my gym. You have to look at other places in your life where you have been successful and where you've overcome that sort of beginner's mentality and just go, there's no reason why I can't do that here too.
I think that's a great segue into another concept of stepping into this online coach role, it's just that we are seemingly stepping into a role that's already defined. We're trying to fit ourself, our business, or create a business into a role that's already kind of established. But I always have found great value in and talk about all the time of really own your skill sets. And most of us don't already know our skill sets. What you were just talking about, I'm already a great mom. I've become a great coach. Our ordinary is somebody else's extraordinary. And if we can take kind of a poll of that and really look at what are all the other things that pour into me then helping somebody, it's beyond just I can write the best program, I know the most about vitamins and minerals. It's how you collectively as a human can communicate that and help somebody. Would you agree?
Totally. And it's, it's almost like what you're describing is kind of like a branding exercise, right? Where you're who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I in this space? Or what are going to be I call them knowables. What are some of my knowables? What are some of the things about me that are a little bit different? It's funny because I just did a rebrand at JillFit, and it was easier for me to come up with who I wasn't than who I was. Like I started with that. I was like, okay, so if I look at the whole online fitness business coaching space, who am I not? And I was like, okay, there's like this group of kind of like bro-y type business coaches where I'm like, they're successful and a lot of them are friends of mine, but that's not my vibe. Right. Yeah. But a lot of my potential clients might go to them because they're like, I don't know who else to go to. Then there's a big group of like heart-centered sort of business coaches where they're very much about like mindset and even like astrology and stuff like that, which is also great, just not my vibe. So I'm like, who then, like, if I'm not
You've been in LA how long and it's not your vibe?
Not quite yet. I know. It's like, what do you want your brand to be? I was like, whatever it is, not astrology. No offense to people who like astrology, just not my thing. So I was like, okay, if I'm not in these camps, then what am I? And so I think for you, if you're listening to this and you're going, okay, what kind of coach am I? Who do I want to be in this space? What do I want to be known as? Look at maybe who you're not first. That might be easier to be like, I'm definitely not this. I'm not this. And so for me, I arrived at this very like no BS approach to business coaching for women, right? So just a different vibe, and it I think can help you. But I think to your point, looking at your unique gifts and skills, and maybe you're doing an inventory with that, or even asking the people closest to you, like, what do you think is different about me? Absolutely. That's something that I have, I've literally coached other coaches on, and I talk about in my content all the time is, if you don't know, again, it's probably because it's your ordinary. What we excel at or what is our kind of just day-to-day norms often are very different from other people and vice versa. Ask your audience. Literally put up a poll on your Instagram story. Ask your mom, ask your friends, your family, hey, when you have this type of problem, who do you go for? Or what do you come to me for specifically? Am I the relationship person? Am I the nutrition person? Am I the, functional biomechanic, whatever your thing is? Again, it probably just comes across as your norm. So ask, and then you might really have a clear kind of roadmap. And ask your clients too, right? So for example, if you have had clients in person, you've had a client who stayed with you for like, I don't know, a decade, why do they keep coming? Yeah. Why are you still here? Because it's definitely not about like, the best exercises. Like that was fatigued, 9 years ago. This is more, they stay with you because of something else that's maybe more intangible. And I think if you can use the internet to exploit that, I think to your point, you're really going to put your stake in the ground. What you just said there, use the internet to exploit that in a very wholesome way. I don't want to ask you like, how do you exploit people? Like, what are your tactics? But there's so many ways out there to put yourself out there, to grow your audience, to grow leads, to get clients. How can we maximize the potential? How can we exploit the potential of the internet in all platforms you found success in this day and age? Such a good question, because what I see, especially with newbies, like I would say in year like 0 to 2, is they feel very boxed into there being one way to be successful. So you mean like on one platform? Right. So they're like, okay, there's one, or maybe they're following like one business coach, and his thing is everyone needs to have a podcast, or everyone needs to be on YouTube. Right. And so like, obviously like that's your bias, but like, and that would be great, but not everyone should do a podcast. Right. So like, I think once you kind of see that there are a million different ways to arrive at success, but you need to have some reps to see that and see more angles, you go, okay, you filter everything through. What could I see myself actually doing? Like, do I, if you're a podcast, you do a lot of talking, and you need to be a good conversationalist and, networking, and like, there's a lot of technology involved. So you have to be ready for something like that. Or, I hate people who say, I hate social media. And I'm like, you might not be cut out for internet business if that's just like a no-go for you. Or I'm not a technology person. I hear that quite a bit. You have an internet business. You have to like get over that hump somehow. But I think in terms of exploitation or how you break through, it's really going to depend on the platform, will depend on, number one, where your people hang out. So for example, if you have an older audience, it might be more Facebook than it is anything else, right? If you are someone who's really looking to build your high ticket one-on-one coaching, you need to be on Clubhouse right now. Like if you're someone who, it's funny, I have this, this client of mine, she's 43 years old and she has almost 200,000 followers on TikTok. And I'm like, what are you putting on there? Like, are you doing dancing videos? Like, what are you doing? She's like, no, I just teach like about clean eating and stuff like that. And she does these little like clips. And now she's doing reels on Instagram, but she was able to break through with that medium. And now a lot of those people are coming onto her email list and over to Instagram and stuff. So what is, if you love video or you love talking on, like, then you're doing YouTube. So where are your people hanging out, number one? And then what's your best? I had this client who English was her second language. And so it was taking her forever to write content. I was like, just do video. You're aesthetic, you know, like you're great on camera. You've been a trainer for a decade. Like you have a really good on-camera presence. Let's just do that. So you have to figure out and filter through what you're good at, to your point about skills, and then also where your people hang out. So
knowing where they are first and kind of maximizing that, putting all your eggs in that basket, so to speak, or most of your eggs in that basket, is step one. Step two, then I'll say, is you got to kind of corral them a little bit. And maybe I'm just speaking personally. I got all these people on one platform. I want to make an offer. I want them to go somewhere else, basically. I want them to go from Instagram to my podcast. I want them to go from my podcast to my email list. Is that the right process, or how can we really efficiently maximize our potential on one platform to then have them go to the next step to ideally being a client? Yeah.
So I kind of break up content into sort of three different buckets. There's obviously free content, which is if you decide, okay, most of my people are on Facebook and Instagram, right? I think that's, for most people listening, that's probably a good place to begin.
Sure.
And to me, I always talk about social media from that perspective, because that's where your potential clients are hanging out. So while when we want to sell, we want to have them into more of like a container, whether it's email marketing, or I use something called Community. I don't know if you're using it for like text messaging service now.
It's another thing I'm sleeping on. I know what you're talking about.
Another thing. But you know, the free content is great, and you need to have a baseline of consistency on these social media platforms. That's where your people are hanging out. That's where you're meeting them, right? So you need to like be there and have some sort of content strategy for that, but immediately try and get them into a container. So like second bucket of content would be more what I call like hoop jumping content or container content. So hoop jumping is they have to like do something to get a little bit more access to you, a little more exclusive access.
They got to have a little bit of a buy-in, get some skin in the game.
Exactly. So this would be like maybe obviously your email list. They'd have to like go in, they have to submit their name and email. They have to confirm their, so an email is great, even though it's probably the least effective it's been ever, but it's still the most effective. It's still more effective for sales than social media. Or a closed Facebook group, like a free group. If you are someone who can really cultivate a community, that might be a great option. That would be, they have to request to join that. A DM, I would consider to be a more closed container. You have their attention, right? And then I'm using, like I said, this platform called Community, which is a text message service. So you want to always be moving them towards that. Of course, the third type of content is paid content, right? So we're always moving people towards a sale. So the bottom of the pyramid is free content. Then we're moving them into this sort of like container content or like more exclusive relationship with you. And then of course from there we sell. So just depends on what you're good at and where you want people to go. There's an infinite number of places you could put content.
Which it leads me to my next question. Do you ever just get tired of all the things? I mean, you run a very successful online coaching business, and you just described a lot of things that someone can do and you do. Where do you find that this is where I shine the most, where I get the highest ROI, and maybe where are you still pouring in energy and resources that you're not getting the ROI now, but you see it coming? And ROI meaning traction, leads, clients, interpret that as you will.
Okay. I think it's funny because it's evolved. When I started, I was a blogger,
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I started as a blogger and my readership grew really quickly, I blogged every day for the first 2 years. And people would read my blog before they even checked their email in the morning. Like it was a really great spot. But then over time, people stopped reading as much long form content. And I kind of got sick of it. And there started to be some other places to put long form content, like long Instagram captions and things like that. So I think recognizing where your people like consumer behavior, I think is really important too. Like, we know that up to 50% of content now is consumed on video. So like if you don't do video, you probably have to start getting used to doing video in some capacity, even if you start with like Instagram stories and talking head videos and stuff like that.
And I think even like 80+% of that video content is read and not even listened to. So it's not enough that you got to do the video. Now you got to have captions on it, kind of thing. So you're going back to the written format. Like,
totally, yeah.
You can't win.
You know, we really are seeing this like bifurcation of attention right now, which is really interesting because people are like, well, people have this 3-second attention span. They do, but you know, with podcasting, people listen to these things for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
So we're seeing this. We're seeing the extremes. We're seeing these like 3 to 15 second videos with reels and TikToks, and people are consuming these. And then people are actually still wanting to buy into longer form content. They want to have like long podcasts they're listening to, or Netflix specials that are 5 episodes long, you know, and people are really invested in those. So there's still a demand for long form content. I feel like that middle piece is where people are not really, it's not doing so well. But in terms of, for me, I think I've been in the space for such a long time. I've seen so many things come and go. Like Facebook at one point was a real hub for me. My Facebook business page, it still has a large following, but I don't get it just has no visibility at this point. So my Instagram posts just go there automatically now, to like populate a little bit of content, but I don't use that as much as I used that, I don't know, 5-10 years ago.
Just to have a presence.
Yeah, to have a presence, to keep it going. I think I have like it on an ad, like a brand awareness ad that's like $5 a day or something. So it like slowly builds over time. But, really, it just depends on, like, again, what you're good at. And for me, I try to automate as much as I can. So if people don't know, I actually work with Chase in one of my podcasts called Fit Biz U. I work with Operation Podcast, and they've been so great. And one of the things that I do is I just batch all my episodes. So the Fit Biz U episodes are 15 minutes or less. And I basically just get into the studio and I just knock out like 10 to 12 episodes right in a row.
Yeah.
So I don't have to constantly feel like your original question about like, does it just drain you? It can if you're not batching stuff and if you're not super streamlined and you don't have stuff automated, for sure. Yeah. But so there's things that maybe you like doing that doesn't feel like it's hard. And then there are things that just maybe you need to do for your business that you don't love, but you got to figure out a workaround for that.
When you were just a couple of sentences ago, you were talking about, you slipped in, I spend about $5 a day on ads. When is it a good time for the online health and fitness professional to start running ads, to start paying for traffic impressions kind of things? What have you seen work, what doesn't, and how do we know it's the time?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I'm not a big fan of what I call like a duct tape business, which is where you're brand new to the space and you're doing everything through paid traffic. You're like, I'm going to pay for followers. I'm going to pay for comments. I'm going to pay for likes. I'm going to pay for engagement. I'm going to pay for email subscribers. I'm going to do like ads for that. I'm going to like create this sales funnel. That feels really, I feel like you haven't like broken through organically quite yet. So you don't even know if your stuff is good yet.
It's like buying a bunch of people to show up for your birthday party and then getting mad when they don't give you a present.
Right.
You know?
Yes, exactly.
I don't know why that just popped in my head, but just, I can imagine it feeling like that. You know?
Yeah. You know what it feels like to me? So I was in Vegas, like maybe 6 months ago, and I was at this restaurant and there was this huge table. It was like a pretty expensive restaurant. There was a huge table right in the middle of the restaurant, and it was just a table of all these young girls in their 20s, and they were all like gorgeous and they were all like decked out and whatever. And my friend just said, that's all like, those are all like, they're modeled, they're paid actors to be here. Like literally in the middle of the restaurant to like get the vibe up,
like,
right?
Hey, look at this place, it's popping, you know.
Right. It's like we got these like, I mean, it literally everyone looks like a model. But it was funny, we could tell because they weren't talking like around the table, they were just talking to the person they were next to. Like they were all just turned and like,
came with you kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a really odd, and they do that. That's actually like a common practice in Vegas, is just like to pay for ambiance.
Oh, like club promoters all the time. Like you'll see a group of good-looking girls or a group of good-looking guys, and hey, we just want you in. Usually it's girls.
Totally.
Guys, we don't win that much. And just, hey, we want you in to draw other people in.
Nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd, right? It's just like marketing 101, but it's very similar. It feels very duct taped together. There's not any meat there, right? There's not anything under the surface. And so I wouldn't recommend, and if you guys have an Instagram account and you are calling yourself a coach, you're going to get people in your DMs who are like, you can get 10,000 followers for $10 or whatever. Like
every day.
I'd recommend not doing that. I think you can really shoot yourself in the foot with something like that. And I've seen a lot of clients come in and they've bought followers and they have no organic traction, and they're trying to rebuild and they're trying to get rid of the bots and they're trying to do all that stuff. And they just like they go to launch and they make $0. Yeah. So, however, I do think that within like the first year, I would recommend, once you have some traction, once you get your one-on-one roster up to the point where you're like almost maxed out there and you're just needing more people. Gotcha. That's the biggest thing, is like, you kind of max out your current following, you max out your following of friends, family, local people, all that kind of stuff. And you're like, I need new eyes you know, everyone who's bought everything's has already bought. And then you get to the point where you're like, you need to do some audience building and some social building.
When is it time to rebuild? And the lens through which I want to ask that question is really your business, your offer. Because as you grow as a professional in any industry, year 1, year 2, year 5, you are hopefully more successful. You've learned more, you've grown from your mistakes, and you have more to offer, i.e. a higher value, a higher price point, or can create something entirely unique. When is it time to kind of restructure your business, reevaluate your offer, and really take a step back and look at what new thing you can offer?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I think if you're in this space long enough, you're going to have multiple different pivot moments. I've probably had like maybe 3 or 4 big pivot moments in my business over the last 10 years. And when I say big, things where I'm just like, I'm retiring this cash cow program. So actually a few years ago, I ran this program. It was my very first business program. I launched it in 2012. It was called Best of You, and it was a year-long business coaching program. And the first year I made like $17,000. And the last launch I did, it was like $500,000 launch.
Wow.
So over that, between 2012 to 2018, like kind of grew over that time. But what was happening was I was getting a lot of people in the program, obviously, but it was 100% sort of self-paced, and there was no sort of coaching with me. And the content was great, but over time we had just added so many more tutorials and like all new stuff. And so what I was noticing was only about 15 to 20% of the people were actually finishing the course. So
only
we literally
15 to 20% of people were finishing
finishing the
course. So they're buying in, and
it's like $1,000 program, right? So it's basically like $1,000, and
75 to 80% of the people are just like, no, I'm good.
Or they'll start for a couple months and they get overwhelmed, or life happens, or there's there's no accountability with me. There's no like calls they're showing up to.
Is that why you think it was? It's lack of accountability or touch point, or
yes.
Okay.
So I was literally like horrified when I kind of like looked at the numbers, and I was like, this is not okay. Like, yes, this program is a cash cow and it's easy for me to launch like once a year. But I was like, I can't in good conscience launch this program. It's not the way it is right now. It's not good.
Good for you. That's amazing. Yeah.
So I retired it, and it was really scary. And then I launched this brand new iteration. It was called Fitness Business Accelerator, FBA, which is my current offering. And I basically stripped down all the content. I was like, less trainings, less tutorials, more FaceTime with me. It's a 6-month program, just nuts and bolts, nothing like excessive. Because I noticed that people were just checking out because it was too robust. They were too overwhelmed. They were feeling behind. They had no accountability with me. In Best of You. So I retired that program. And then the first time I ran FBA, it was a 6-month program, I made $60,000. And I was like, starting from scratch. No, the first time I ran the program.
Oh, wow,
so it was basically like, I went from a $500,000 program to like my new iteration, because it's a brand new product. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm starting from scratch, right? Like, and this is my 3rd year running it, and we made $200,000 off it this year. But it was like, so it's like, but that was a big risk, right? That was a risk. I could have kept just going with this program, you know, that I knew would do well, but I couldn't in good conscience put that same product out because things had changed in the space, right? So I think there's moments like that where you go, wow, this thing, blogging is another example. This was working for a time. Now it's not really working as well as it once did. I can't in good conscience tell people that this is a strategy, you know, so you kind of go back and you'll know, because things will stop working. And that's really scary the first time that happens to you, because you go, if it's not this, what is it?
Is it me?
Do I just need to stop doing it? Like you do, you have that moment of like, am I just not good? You know? And so I've had moments like that. And the good news is there's always another place. People are still buying online. They're buying more than they've ever bought. So it's like, people are buying. Where are they buying? Right? We just have to figure out what and where. And to me, I always like one of my mantras is I can see this as a pain, or I can see this as a puzzle. And to me, that has always helped me reframe anything where I, you know, because you're going to have multiple, and I'm sure you have too, like things you run up against where you're like, I don't know where to go, but they're somewhere.
Head meet wall, just like repeatedly.
Yeah. And if you don't know what the solution is, that can feel really disorienting and scary, but there's always a solution.
Yeah. There always is. If we just take enough time to just pause, sometimes just literally taking a breath, taking a step back, detaching, and then going to your community, going to your support group. Hopefully you have one. But then also my next question is, you know, I found great value when I do reach those pain points. I need to rebrand. I'm tired of doing this. I want to create something else. It's time for me to level up. And me as a coach over the years, leveling up means community. It means finding a coach. So when do we go from offering to trying to find someone who has an offer for us?
I would do that immediately, to be honest. Like I would say if you're really serious about like, I want to do this for the rest of my life, then like you need support, you need mentorship. to me, I've had the best mentors over the last 10 years. And to me, like, I couldn't have done it without them, like without their insight, because they just see things differently than you. You know, they can point out the
it's
blind
another
spots.
person. It's an objective opinion.
And they're maybe where you want to be. So my current mentor, you know, is a $10 million a year business. And I'm like, I remember we went to our first live event and I was like, he doesn't have anything I don't have. He just made different decisions in his business, right? So like it just is a good light bulb moment for me to go, there's no reason why I can't do that too. Here's someone who's literally giving me their playbook, you know? And so when you have a coach and I would look at, if you're looking for a mentor, look at someone who has a lifestyle that you want to have, or someone who has a similar, I've made bad decisions around mentors before. When I've made bad decisions, it's more because I thought I needed to. The person wasn't a good fit personality wise. You spend a lot of time with this person, right? So you need to like be able to like, could I even hang out with this person for a weekend? Like you have to figure out
Can we get a meal together, a cup of coffee or a beer? Like,
yes, exactly.
If it's no to any of those, and you know, maybe time to look elsewhere. Right.
Because at some point you're just not really going to respect, you know what I mean? Like there's going to be a disconnect. So look at, you know, who's living the lifestyle that you want or has this sort of even business model that you want. And then also like personality, value system, huge.
Where do you see the future of online health and fitness coaching going? Is it one-on-one? Is it group? Is it kind of a collective accumulation of all the things that you've done and just finding a new way to package it? Or what are you most excited for now?
You know, I think there's always going to be a market for all of those things. I think because there's just different audiences, right? For the high ticket one-on-one, it's someone who's like ready for that full transformation. For the group stuff, it's the community-based stuff. It's for someone who like really wants that sense of community and like really wants that, you know, especially in the pandemic, you know, feeling connected to people. And then the more DIY self-paced option is still viable for someone who's just like, I'm good, right? I'm self-sufficient. I don't need a lot of like phone calls and stuff like that. So there's, you know, I think there's gonna be markets for each one of them. I can tell you that the space is, because it's getting more saturated, we got to be better marketers. The value isn't self-evident anymore. You can't be like, you get 2 Zoom calls and a Facebook group, and like you can't just list out the deliverables of the thing that you're offering and have it be evident that it's valuable. So you have to get better at talking about, because the client's always filtering it through, how is this different than everything I've tried before that hasn't worked, right? They don't necessarily trust themselves. I always remember that people have like a graveyard of maybe diets or programs that they bought at one point, they've invested money in that didn't work for them. So that's what we're really selling. We're not selling our program. We're selling why ours is different than all the other shit that they've tried. You know, so you really have to get better at communicating the value of the thing that you're doing, and also guarantee success. Don't be scared to guarantee success.
Yeah, really.
You know, like they want to know like, okay, I really, Chase, this program sounds amazing, but I don't know that I trust myself to do it. So how are you going to hold my hand? Like, how are you going to make sure that I don't fall off? How are you going to make sure I stay engaged? How are you going to make sure I'm successful? And I think as coaches, we have a lot more wiggle room in that realm than we think we do. We're like, well, we can lead a horse to water, but we can't make him drink. I think that's really just like short-sighted. Interesting.
Yeah, I love the perspective. And you mentioned, you know, getting that client to success is very, very important. Like I mentioned, I think a couple of times, you have to be able to deliver. And one thing that I definitely missed the mark on early on in my coaching career as a self-employed coach was, well, what happens when they do reach that? Are they done? Do we say goodbye? Then I have to go back and market myself, you know, which can work. Maybe you have a hard start, hard stop kind of thing, but your clients will inevitably reach a point of success, whether that's weight loss, muscle gain, lifestyle, certain biomarkers change for the better, or just whatever you work on with them. I guess my question is, how can we know that going into a client experience and plan ahead so that we kind of always have somewhere for them to go within our scope of practice and within being able to add value still, of course, not just trying to let me upsell, if that makes sense.
Totally. I mean, I'm a huge fan of, and this is what I teach my students, to be prescriptive. You know, I think a lot of times the client comes in and they're just waiting to be told what they should do. You know, I think we like are like, how do you want to do this or this? And they're like, I don't know.
Isn't that what I'm paying you for?
Right. They're like, which one do you think I should do? Right. So I think if you are a coach, I would encourage you to be prescriptive with, like, literally look at this individual in front of you and go like, do they need 6 months with me? Do they need a year with me? Do they need 2 years with me? Do they need just 2 months with me? Literally based on where they're at, what do they need? So for example, let's say you sign up a one-on-one client and they are with you for 3 months. And at the end of it, you literally look at it instead of just going, how much money can I get out of this person? I want you to instead go, what does this person really need? What does the next leg of their journey look like? Do they need more Do they have a goal that they're working towards that we can kind of like double down on things? Or are they just good and do they just need a little bit of like mindset work with me? Do they need a little accountability? Do they need some like low, just low access check-ins? What exactly do you think they need? And then tell them that. That's really trust building. Instead of you being like, so do you want to re-up for another 3 months? Say, hey, so here's where I think we're at. Here's what I would like to do moving forward. Here's where I think we can really make magic. Like, get clinical, right? Get clinical and get prescriptive. I think people really appreciate that. So it sounds like you took into consideration their journey.
Yeah, you actually consider them. The humanization component here is crucial. Yeah.
Yeah, huge. So, and there might be a time, to your point, where if they've been with you, and I experience it a lot of times, most of my mastermind members stay with me for 2 to 3 years. And then I'm like,
that's amazing.
Yeah. I'm like, you're good. Like, I can't teach you everything. Like, whatever the next iteration of your business, whatever that looks like, go find that person,
Yeah. Would you say that the person coming to a coach looking for, I'll say the usual things, I want to get fitter, I want to feel better, look better, improve my healthy lifestyle habits, things like that. Is that possible in a 30-day program, 90-day program? Or should we all really, new coaches or established ones, should we only be considering a long-term offer? And kind of, what's the word you just used? Prescribing, have different prescriptions along the way kind of way.
I think there's a time and a place for a shorter term commitment. And I think specifically it's for people who maybe don't trust themselves quite yet, right? So for example, if I'm going to have someone who's going to sign up for a 6-month commitment at a high ticket, like they know it's going to be a big undertaking, but they might be scared that they're like, I really want to work with you, but like that just scares me. So if they're the type of person that would maybe not take you up on that because they don't trust themselves quite yet, I think there's utility by almost giving them a little taste of what it's like to work with you and just trust yourself enough. Like to me, I love, and I've done this before in the past, if I've had someone who I just know is going to be so great for the mastermind, I'm like, this person is going to fucking crush it. Like as soon as they get this strategy, like we're going to be off and running, but they're like a little hesitant. I'm like, hey, let's just do 2 months. Let's do 2 months. Like I'll give you that option. Normally it's a 12-month commitment. I'm like, let's do 2 months and then we can reevaluate after 2 and see where you're at with stuff.
Amazing.
And most people, I would say 95% of the people I've done that with, only a handful, but they've stayed on the whole year. Yeah. They just need to see, right? They don't quite trust yet. They need to see. So for example, 30 days, of course, is not enough time for a full transformation. So be upfront on that with your clients, but say, you know what? I really want to just do 30 days. I want to see the momentum that we can build in 30 days and see where we're at and we'll reevaluate. This really lowers the barrier to entry for them. And it makes it feel so low risk. Like, oh, well, I can definitely do 30 days. And then you as a coach just fucking crush it. Like crush it for them. Over deliver every time. So much value to the point where they're like mind blown. I can't believe I even hesitated to get in this program with you. This is amazing. What else do you have? That's the secret sauce, really. Yeah, it's a mid-step, right? Yeah. Like, so I think it's okay to have this mid-step, but to your point, the eye is always on a longer term commitment. Because when you talk about the viability of your business, it really depends on higher tickets, right? And then longer term commitments. Have you ever come across a client, whether that's a health and fitness client or a business coaching client, where you're just kind of beating your head up against a wall and you kind of realize, this is no longer within my scope of practice? Does that question make sense? Like they need some other kind of help, or I've kind of maxed out what I can do here. And if so, like, how did you go about that? Yeah. More so when I did nutrition coaching. So my kind of personal background and the reason why I got into this was I was a figure competitor for a long time, and I did that all through my 20s, and I did a lot of shows, and I got into like really obsessive dieting practices. And then when I started my business in 2010, I was like, okay, I can't afford to be at the gym 3 times a day and be thinking about food all the time and all this kind of stuff. So I had to figure out how I could minimize the amount of time and sort of mental energy it was taking me. And I came up with this nutrition philosophy called Moderation 365. And it's essentially like a mindfulness and moderation program. And we have a certification now to teach other professionals how to do this. But because of my own background, I was attracting a lot of really obsessive, extreme people. And some of them I was quite frankly like, you need a therapist, like, and like, I want to help you with this, but like, this is bordering on ED, like on some sort of eating disorder that I don't feel fully equipped to handle. And I'm worried that, you are at the point where like, this isn't really, we're not in that range that I can help you. It's more than just, hey, we can just share experiences and that may provide value and actual help. But when it comes to like, you need to be supervised. Trying to tell you what to do. You need to be like, you need like supervision and you need like, some more support in that realm. I don't really attract too many of the people anymore because that's not really a part of my story anymore. But at the beginning, for sure, there were moments like that. And that's always a hard conversation to have because you don't, and not that you don't want to turn away business. That's fine. You just don't want to, you want to help the person.
Yeah.
You want to be able to provide, but it's just sometimes not, it's not a no, it's just a no for right now.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, that could be applied to so many things in this, for attracting the right customer.
I've turned down a lot of clients, not like a ton, but like I turn down a good amount of people who want to work with me, not because they're not great, but just because either they're not ready or like already they're too high maintenance or just like our vibes aren't matching up, or they're not at the level that I would let them come into the mastermind. Cause I got to keep, the level at a certain, proficiency for everyone else in the group. So I'm really protective of that group. So yeah.
Where can we go after this? Where can we go after the transformation? Where can we go after mentorships and coaching and masterminds? And is it just, there's always just going to be one other thing that we can do and person we can learn from, community we can join? Have you kind of tapped out, do you think, or are you just like looking for the next thing?
It's funny. I don't know if you remember this, like a few weeks ago, we kind of like had a little DM chat because I was bringing on some team members. And you were like, oh, done that before. Like you get to the point where you have to. So yeah, I think there's always
I literally said to you, why did it take so long? Or in my head, I was like, finally.
And I think I was under the assumption that, and I have a full-time VA and she does like the majority of the stuff, but it's gotten to the point where if I want to get to the next level, I can't keep trying to like push the model that I'm doing. And so, I had this sort of moment where it's like, okay, what got me here won't get me there, sort of a thing. So I think there's always a next level of business to go to. But to your point, you mentioned this earlier in the episode that like you have a passion and you want to do something else, right? So maybe you're like, maybe I do want to start a podcast. There's always a different project. There's always a different space. So for example, I have a lot of health and fitness coaches I work with who like over time, they just don't want to talk about it anymore. They want to talk. They want to do personal development. They want to even do business coaching. So I think there's always a different place to go. And part of why I love entrepreneurship so much, especially personal branding, is that like you get to create the life that you want. Like it should be fun. You should wake up like every day excited to do this because you literally have this little like corner of the internet that gets to be like your philosophies, the things you share, to me, it's like a living blog, it's a lot of fun. So
I agree.
I have not gotten tapped out yet.
Good.
But even the business building stuff is really challenging, and that's kind of a different hobby. No
doubt. And kind of getting towards the end here, I just want to again say thank you for coming on the show and acknowledge all the great work that you do. I mean, I've seen you over the years, and getting to know you more so over the last couple of years has been great. And the work that you're doing for other health and fitness professionals is just, it's transformational because you're helping so many other people help so many other people change their lives. So
that's really cool.
It is really cool. So my last question before the last question is what you just said that really resonated with me because my audience is probably tired of me hearing this, but one more time. A couple months ago, and even still slightly a little bit now, I went through and I'm going through a very, very intense burnout. And it was centered around the work that I'm doing. I just felt very detached. I felt like some things were just draining me more than they should. I was having to motivate myself to do the things that I used to wake up and love to do. And sometimes I would literally just sit at my computer, sit at my phone, and just do nothing. And that, I think, for me, showed where it was time to grow. And it was time for me to look at the things I was doing and not doing and just immediately gut check. Does this light me up? Yes or no, kind of thing, because that directly relates to where's my energy going? Where am I getting excited? Where am I getting bored? Where am I getting stressed out? And what you were just saying lastly there is, I think, so profound in not only helping the health and fitness professional go through burnout, to transform, to level up. And it's a big, wide world out there of potential. So what would you say to that person who is feeling some kind of way about what they're doing and they kind of think they want to do something else, and it's very scary to leave, but this is what they know me as, this is what I used to do? Like, how do we get out of that mindset so that we can step into the next best thing waiting for us?
I love that you called it a gut check because I think that really is. We know when it's not aligned anymore. Like we know when we're kind of like tired. But one of the things you just said in that last sentence, which was it's scary to leave because that's been your identity, or that's where you've built your clout. That's the key. Like that part is the key. I see so many entrepreneurs like you and I who are multi-passionate, but they never break through with one thing because they're like, well, I want to talk mindset. I want to talk nutrition. I want to talk fitness. I want to talk health. And that's great. And I'm all for having like a multi-passionate sort of like being that type of person. But when it comes to business, you need to double down on at least one thing first.
Okay.
You're allowed to be bored after you've already broken through. Like, I'm sorry, but like your business isn't here to entertain you. Like at some point you do need to break through. But the cool thing is that trust does translate. Yeah. So if you have broken through with health and fitness and you have, built a business and you've, helped a lot of people and they come to know you as that person who does that thing, and you want to transition to business or you want to transition to more personal development, your people will come with you. They will follow you. Not everyone, I used to do a lot of competition prep because I was a competitor. And when I started talking about moderation, I had a small percentage of my audience that was like, that's not hardcore enough for me. Right. So they're not going to come along for the next part, but a lot of people did. So,
and you have to be okay with that.
Right.
You have to learn to become okay with
totally.
it.
I mean, and not only do you have to be okay with it, but like it should feel liberating. Like it should feel like a relief. I have a client right now who's she's a macro coach, but she used to deal with a lot of like HPA axis dysfunction and metabolic damage and stuff, and she's still getting a ton of those people from like old YouTube videos, and she just doesn't like want to work with them anymore. And so she just literally unlisted all of her YouTube videos because she's like, I don't even want those kinds of leads coming in anymore.
Cut the cord.
Yeah, she was getting a ton of leads, but they weren't the right people. So I think it's okay to like just,
That's more than a gut check. That's that's profound action.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And she was like, and she said that she felt relieved. And I was like, that tells you it's probably the right decision. So you'll know. I mean, I think if you're an introspective person, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you are. So you'll know when it's feeling out of alignment. But the caveat that I want to just put in there is that you do need to break through at some point, like with something. You can't just arrive on the scene and never end up being known for anything because you're just constantly jumping from thing to thing. So with JillFit, we were lucky because we broke through with health and fitness. So, like I was known for that. A lot of people had a transformation with me, nutrition wise or fitness wise. So when I decided to do business, a lot of people were like, maybe I could start my own business, right? But they came from the sort of fitness and nutrition pipeline.
Where you came from doesn't have to be the same place you're going. And I'll say it shouldn't. It really shouldn't, because there's too much out there to learn and to experience and to apply, and then to turn back and help those people 1 or 1,000 steps behind you. Yeah. And that does lead me to the last question, and it's a perfect kind of tie-in. It's almost like I did it on purpose. And that's what I'm talking about here on the show and in all my content is bringing awareness to all these key areas in our life that can help us do that on the individual level, on the business level, so that we can move forward, that we can live a life ever forward. So what does that mean to you, Jill? How does that fall on you today?
I love this conversation because it, to me, I'm like that type of person. I'm like never bored. There's always like something to learn, somewhere to go. And I think it really comes down to like, are you excited about the next thing? Where there's always somewhere to go. And I think that if you're in this space long enough, just tapping into like where your energy is at and where maybe your energy is not anymore. And so living life ever forward to me means exploring new things. Like one of the things that I've done recently is I've gotten a lot more into hobbies. Like I don't just sit at my computer all day. I'm doing like skateboarding and snowboarding.
I see rollerblading now.
Yeah, I'm like roller skating. Yeah. So
yeah.
like just a lot of different, like I just started taking beach volleyball lessons. Like I think it is still really important to have be multi-passionate, but to me you can always learn a new skill, and that's really exciting. It's frustrating, but it's really exciting too. So for me, I really feel like it's looking at how can I become the best version of myself, and that's probably going to change over time. The things that I valued 10 years ago, I might not value as much anymore, instead of like, what's the next version of me? What's the next iteration of me? I've historically been really good at shedding old selves and being like, all right, what's a new version? What's the next level Jill look like? And I honestly, and I'll give you this little insight, this is literally how I make decisions, like moment to moment. Any decision in my life, I don't make the decision from who I am right now. I make the decision based on who I want to become. So I literally say, who would the Jill 5 years from now, what would she make? What decision would she make in this moment? Or what would Oprah, or someone who's super successful, what would literally, what decision would they make in this moment? And so I'm constantly acting as if I'm already that person. And so everything I filter through, I'm like, this is really scary, but yep, Jill, this more successful version of Jill would make this decision. Yeah. And then you kind of like you breathe into that new version that way. And
the next thing you know, you wake up, shit, I am that person.
I am that person, right?
Yeah, future Jill wasn't that far away.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. You're so intelligent and so experienced and just so direct in terms of these are things that the person can apply today. Listening, watching, like, you should take this stuff home and apply one thing at least, and then go find you to learn more. So please let them know where they can connect with you.
Yeah, for sure. So if this content resonates with you guys, make sure you hit up FitBizU podcast. It's at FitBizU on Instagram, and then at JillFit on Instagram as well. And then just JillFit.com is the spot.
Cool.
So that's
it'll all be down in the show notes for everybody.
Love it.
And so that's a wrap. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.